It wasn't pretty, but Syracuse gets it done, and now the stage is set.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And folks, on today's post-game reaction podcast, we are talking about a win. That's right. The last two episodes have both been Syracuse basketball losses, but Syracuse football played this afternoon. They took on UConn at home, and they beat them 31-24. It was not a perfect game for Syracuse, but we're going to go over the critical plays that led to Syracuse's victory. Plus, later on, we're going to talk about the two wide receivers that went down in this game. But Syracuse football has a lot of depth at wide receiver, so they should be okay going forward. However, of course, we do wish those two receivers, Trebor Pena and Umari health. Obviously, we want them to be healthy, right? But from a football standpoint, they should be able to be okay. And now, the stage is set for next week. And I'm going to tell you guys why I believe Syracuse football should be hosting College Gameday next week against Miami. That's coming up later in the podcast. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So it was not a perfect game for Syracuse football, but they won the game 31-24. They really controlled it from start to finish. I mean, the start of this game, the first two plays, Syracuse football scored a touchdown to quickly jump up 7-0. The first play was a 50-yard bomb, a perfect throw from McCord to Darrell Gill, And then the next play was a back shoulder corner route on a double move to Oronde Gadsden that put the Orange up 7-0. It should have been more than 7-0. Should have been more than 7-0 later on, because on the next drive, Syracuse football appears to score a touchdown. It's Trebor Pena. He was wide open in the left corner, but Jackson Meeks fails to run his route. See, it was a pick play, but he doesn't make an attempt to actually run a route. He instead just kind of bullies over the defensive back, and that's offensive pass interference every time, and the referees got the call right. Of course, because of the penalty, which is 15 yards, Syracuse football has to settle for a 36-yard field goal, and Jackson Kennedy misses the field goal. And then on the next possession that UConn had, they face a 4th and 1 in their own territory, and they score a 71-yard rushing touchdown. The reason why they scored that touchdown is because the running back, I want to say it was Edwards, he gets near the line to gain, but Duce Chestnut, he atoned for the mistake later on in the game. But on this particular play, in the first quarter, he doesn't wrap up the ball carrier, and as a result, the running back breaks the tackle, and he goes 71 yards to the house to tie the game. It was a huge 14-point swing. And Syracuse at the half, I believe they only led 21-14. And Fran Brown said at the half that the details just weren't there for Syracuse. They just weren't there. But they were playing well, and they were clearly moving the ball. I mean, McCord had over 330 yards in the first half. He finished for 470 in the game. But why did Syracuse ultimately win? Because I just pointed out a lot of kind of the bad stuff that happened. They won the game for a couple of reasons. Syracuse football is up 24-14 in the third quarter. There's 4:35 to go in the third quarter. And they're up by 10. Good spot to be in if you're Syracuse, right? UConn takes over at their own 25, and Justin Barron saves a touchdown. UConn broke loose with another big run, and it looked like it was a house call, but Justin Barron had a shoestring tackle that saved a touchdown. This was such a critical play in the game that he didn't give up. He made the tackle. Yeah, UConn got it all the way down into Syracuse territory, but the Orange were then able to make a great defensive stand and force UConn actually on that drive to punt. What could have been a 75-yard touchdown run turned into a punt for UConn. That was a critical play in this game. Shout out to Justin Barron for making that shoestring tackle. Huge credit to him. Now it's the fourth quarter, okay? UConn gets a field goal. It's 24-17 Syracuse, and the Orange have the ball facing a 3rd and 5 at their own 32-yard line. I'll be honest with you, I wasn't nervous. I really thought throughout the game that Syracuse was going to win. They were controlling the game. But you know that feeling of you're the better team, you're at home, you're dominating, but the score is still close. It's still a close game, right? You don't want to leave that inferior opponent hanging around too much. You don't want to give them hope that they can pull off an upset. You don't want to give them the chance to steal it. 3rd and 5 at their own 32-yard line. If Syracuse doesn't convert, they got to punt it away, and UConn has a chance to tie the game. Think about that. In the fourth quarter, they could have tied the game potentially, but Kyle McCord finds Oronde Gadsden for a 20-yard pickup, a huge conversion when Cuse is only up 7 points. And then later on in the drive, Kyle McCord, an underthrown ball to Jackson Meeks. It was underthrown, but you can say it was back shoulder sure. Near the UConn goal line, it's pass interference. It sets up Syracuse 1st and 10 at the UConn 23. And then later on, Syracuse scores a touchdown. It was Kyle McCord on a quarterback sneak that put them up 31-17. So now they're in control about midway through the fourth quarter. But another big play in this game, the next drive, UConn is driving. They're driving the ball down the field. They're near midfield. They're actually probably past midfield, I think, at this point. It's 3rd and 1. 3rd and 1. That's a pretty easy conversion, I should say. Sorry, I'm having trouble speaking right now. But credit to Duce Chestnut for atoning for the mistake he made in the first quarter on the 4th down play. On this play, instead of lowering his shoulder, he actually wraps up the running back and he tackles him for a loss of 1. It creates a 4th and 2, and then Barry Buxton with excellent coverage on a deep ball. And Syracuse gets a 4th down stop in the fourth quarter, and they take over with about 6 minutes left. From then on, there wasn't much to speak on. I mean, yeah, sure, UConn did eventually get the ball back. They drove down the field, but they took too much time off the clock. Syracuse made them use their timeouts. So they end up scoring a touchdown to make it 31-24. But UConn would have to recover an onside kick. And even if they get it, they would have about 1:20 and change left with the timeout. So it's not even a guarantee that they would score a touchdown anyway. But Syracuse recovers the onside kick. This is where Umari Hatcher gets hurt. We'll talk about that in the next segment. But overall, Syracuse football wins this game 31-24. It wasn't perfect, but they made the critical plays to win. Justin Barron saving a touchdown in the third quarter. Kyle McCord on a 3rd down and 5 in their own territory, hitting Oronde Gadsden for 20. Duce Chestnut on 3rd and 1 with a big-time stop, actually wrapping up the ball carrier this time. And those are the three plays that propelled Syracuse to a win over UConn. I'm Jackson Holzer. This is Locked On Syracuse. We're breaking down the Orange's victory over the UConn Huskies today, 31-24. Leave your comments in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on the game? Syracuse football gets its 8th win of the season. Tremendous accomplishment in Fran Brown's first year as a head coach at any level, let alone just Syracuse at any level. Tremendous accomplishment. Now, coming up, we'll talk about the 2 wide receivers for Syracuse that went down in this game. We obviously wish them well health-wise, but the Orange, with their depth chart, we'll talk about one receiver in particular, they should be okay next week in UConn, even if they are without these 2 players we're going to talk about coming up. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including states like California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. You think like a guy like Justin Jefferson will get more than 83.5 yards this week, Lamar Jackson more than 1.5 touchdowns. Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. This is Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. We are talking about Syracuse football's victory over UConn this afternoon, 31-24, to get their 8th win of the regular season, something they have not done since 2018. Congratulations to this Syracuse football team. We talked about the critical plays that led the Orange to victory over the Huskies this afternoon. But now, on a little bit of a sour note, we got to talk about the 2 wide receivers that went down with injuries today against UConn. First of which, let's talk about Trebor Pena. Trebor Pena did not play in the second half. Brent Axe over at Syracuse.com, he reported that he got x-rays and was seen on the sideline wearing a white jumpsuit, for what it's worth. A white jumpsuit. Cool. It's unclear the severity of the injury, but it does appear to be upper body. At least that's what Brent Axe reported. ACC Network said in the third quarter that Trebor Pena was out for the game, and he did not return for the second half. Don't know exactly where he got hurt or if it's something that has been bothering him for a while. He did not play in the second half, so that's something to definitely monitor. And by the way, folks, as soon as I have an update, I'll pin a comment in the comment section below when I have an update on Trebor Pena. And the next guy that we're going to talk about, which is Umari Hatcher. It was a really unfortunate injury for Umari Hatcher. Not to say that Trebor Pena's wasn't, but on this particular play for Umari Hatcher, he hurt his right leg on the onside kick attempt. It kind of got tangled up there. It did not look pretty at all. Now, luckily enough, the cart did not have to come out, which is always a good sign. But when he was getting helped off the field by trainers, he could not put any weight on his right leg. So it does not look good. Again, I do not know, and I do not want to speculate the severity of the injury to Umari Hatcher, but it did not look good at all. Obviously, best wishes to Umari Hatcher and Trebor Pena. Hope they are okay. Now, the good news for Syracuse on the football front with these injuries, obviously you never want to see players go down, particularly 2 players in the same position group, right? Trebor Pena and Umari Hatcher both went down. The good news is that Syracuse is loaded at wide receiver. I mean, think about it. This season, they have been without Zeed Haynes, who was projected to be their wide receiver 1 since the second week of the season. They can survive more injuries. At least I think. If you look at the depth chart today, you still have Oronde Gadsden, who went 11 for 103 and a touchdown. Jackson Meeks, obviously, 7 catches for 110. Obviously, you got LaQuinn Allen, one of the better receiving backs in the entire country. But really, the player that stole the show today for Syracuse, at least on the outside, was Darrell Gill. Darrell Gill with 9 catches for 177 yards, no touchdowns. He should have had a touchdown. It wouldn't have been a receiving touchdown. There was an end around play in the fourth quarter. It was the play before Kyle McCord's quarterback sneak in the fourth, where Darrell Gill, all he had to do was extend the ball on an end around, and it would have been a touchdown. He does not, but it's neither here nor there. He was awesome. And on the very first play of the game, it was a sign of things to come. The very first play of the game was a 50-yard bomb to Darrell Gill. I think that just speaks to the depth that Syracuse has at the receiver position, at the skill position in general. That, hey, Umari Hatcher, he goes down late in the game. Trebor Pena doesn't play the entire second half, and the offense really doesn't skip a beat. Because you've got a guy like Darrell Gill who can fill in, and not just fill in, but have 9 catches for over 170 yards. What a performance from Darrell Gill. He was getting open all day long against this UConn secondary. Jackson Meeks was his usual self. He continues his breakout season. Unfortunate that it's his last season. He's got no more years of eligibility. And Oronde Gadsden was Oronde Gadsden. So overall on the outside, and by the way, we'll see about Zede Haynes if he can play next week. Fran Brown has been mentioning it over the course of a few weeks. He is back with the team, but obviously needs to get into game shape and everything like that. So maybe next week is the week that he returns against Miami. It would be a pretty good time. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that as unfortunate as those injuries are, you never wish injury upon anyone, Syracuse is in a good position at the receiver spot and an overall pass catching standpoint to where they can survive these injuries. I mean, think about Justice Ross Simmons. He was a big-time transfer from Colorado State. He hasn't really done much this season. He had a big catch in this game for 32 yards, and he was huge in the Virginia Tech game. But you know that they can call his number. They can call his number next week, and they should be okay. I think, right? Leave your comments in the comments section below. Are you concerned with the receivers going forward for this next game? Are you? Or are you not? Because I choose not to be too worried about it, as much as it sucks that they did lose 2 wide receivers in this game due to injury. We don't know the severity. Maybe they're both back next week. Maybe none of them are back next week. Maybe one of them is back. Point being is that if they both can't go against Miami, I think this offense will be okay. So we have talked about the critical plays that led Syracuse to a win. I gave you my thoughts on the 2 wide receivers going down, Trebor Pena and Umari. Obviously, we wish them nothing but the best. We hope they recover okay from their injuries. They should be okay from a depth chart standpoint. Coming up, the stage is set for Miami. And folks, I think Syracuse football, objectively speaking, I know this is a Syracuse podcast, but objectively speaking, I think Syracuse should get College Game Day next week. What do you guys think? Every time I have a pre-alcohol before drinks, I notice a difference the next day. Even after a night out, I can confidently plan on, hey, let's say recording an episode of Locked On Syracuse without any worry. First step is to drink pre-alcohol. For the best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Obviously, you also got to drink responsibly. Pace yourself, hydrate, and get a good night's sleep. And then just enjoy the next day. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to ZBiotics.com/LockedOnCollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use code LockedOnCollege at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to ZBiotics.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers, they can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app, it gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Now, Syracuse football heading into this game against UConn was a 10.5-point favorite. It looked like the Orange were going to cover. They were up 31-17 late in the game, but a late Huskies touchdown, unfortunately, it prevented the cover. Syracuse still won the game, so you can't be that mad. But if you did bet Syracuse minus 10.5, I do feel a little bit sorry for you that a late touchdown ruined it. At least you'll take a Syracuse victory. Anyways, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Folks, the stage is set. Syracuse is playing Miami next week. Huge implications on the line. And guys, I'm going to go on record right now. I believe that Syracuse deserves to host College Game Day. They deserve it, and I'm going to tell you why in this segment, okay? First of all, let's kind of set the stage for everything, all right? Because it's kind of the perfect storm. SMU, they clinched an ACC title berth with a beatdown over Virginia today. That means that SMU next week, they don't have to play for anything. They don't. They're in the ACC title game. They're good. They're clinched. Miami, they beat Wake Forest today. They beat Wake Forest. Now, Miami must beat Syracuse to also clinch a berth to the ACC title game. If they lose, Clemson goes to the conference title game. And I believe that Syracuse deserves game day. I really do. We just set the stage right there. Let's talk about the other possible matchups that could get College Game Day this week. There's only really one that I think has a chance of usurping Syracuse-Miami, okay? Let's start off with Michigan-Ohio State. The biggest rivalry in all of college sports. It is one of the biggest rivalries in all of sports ever. Michigan-Ohio State. It's the game for a reason. So obviously you would think that they would get College Game Day. Wrong. Well, Game Day was at Ohio State this week for Ohio State, Indiana. Well, there you go. Are they going to do it back-to-back weeks? I highly doubt it. Plus, Michigan just isn't very good. They're not very good. Now, if Michigan was like they were last season, I would say maybe they do get Game Day again. Not this time. So I wouldn't say Michigan-Ohio State. How about Clemson, South Carolina? It's a big rivalry matchup, and they're two good teams. But it lacks stakes. It lacks the stakes. Because Clemson doesn't need to win the game. It's out of conference. They just need Miami to lose to get the ACC title game. And South Carolina, while a good team, is not playing for anything. So it's a good matchup on paper, but I don't see them getting College Game Day. There's nothing on the line in that one. Auburn, Alabama, the Iron Bowl, another huge college football rivalry. Well, Game Day went to Alabama earlier this season for Georgia, Alabama. Okay. Game Day doesn't love going to the same venue twice in a season. Just keep that in mind. So that's a big deal that they've already been to Alabama. And the other thing is that Auburn isn't good. Auburn isn't a good team. Sorry. That's just how it is. So that kind of rules out the Iron Bowl and the game. There's at least one team in there that's not very good, that wouldn't be playing for anything. And Clemson, South Carolina, while a good matchup and a rivalry, there's no stakes. There's none. This one is the one that I'm going to talk about coming up that could get College Game Day instead of Syracuse. But I'll make the case for Syracuse to get it. Texas A&M. Okay? There could be high stakes in that one. Well, we'll see what happens with Texas A&M tonight. But there could be high stakes. Now, the thing is that Game Day already went to College Station earlier this season. In fact, it was week 1 for Texas A&M Notre Dame. And Game Day, again, they try to avoid going to the same venue twice in a season, but it was in week 1. So they could do it again. And these are two very good teams in the SEC, which obviously there's a bias towards the SEC, and we all know this, okay? But I think that Syracuse-Miami has the best case for College Game Day. I'll tell you why right now. First of all, you got to have two good teams. Syracuse is 8-3. Miami is 10-1. Those are two. What do you think? Those are two good teams, right? At least record-wise. 10-1 versus 8-3. How about that? There are massive stakes on the line. Not for Syracuse. Syracuse is playing for pride. But Miami. This is a must-win game for Miami. If they win, they're in the ACC title game. If they lose, they're out. And if they lose the game, they might be left out of the college football playoff altogether. This is a massive game for Miami. They have to beat Syracuse next week. So there are huge stakes on the line. Number 3, there's a big college football brand. That matters when it comes to selecting College Game Day. Miami may not be kind of the same aura it once was in the 80s and the early 2000s, but they are still a big brand in college football. Not to say that Syracuse is a little brand. They're not a little brand. But they haven't been good really in so long, aside from 2018. But they're not the same level of brand as, a Miami. Does that make sense? It's not to say that the program is bad. That's not what I'm saying. It's just the brand value. You do have a big brand, though, in Miami, and that does matter. It's kind of the reason why Texas and Texas A&M could get game day instead. Those are 2 SEC teams, 2 big brands in college football. That's why it could get it. But at least you got one big one in Miami, and Syracuse is a power team, so it's not too little. Number 4, you got 2 elite quarterbacks, one of which is a Heisman hopeful. You got Cam Ward of Miami and Kyle McCord of Syracuse. That sets up for great television. And you can build that up between 2 of the premier quarterbacks in the ACC and in the country. You can really build that up if you're College Game Day. You can really sell the story of Kyle McCord transferring from Ohio State and looking so amazing for Syracuse and turning around the program, and Cam Ward coming in as a transfer to Miami and he's having a Heisman season and the U is back. You can sell that to people because you got 2 elite quarterbacks. And number 5, you want to go to a new place? Game day has never been to Syracuse. You've been to Texas A&M already this season. You've been to Michigan. You've been to Ohio State. You've been to Alabama. You've been to South Carolina. How about go to Syracuse? This is the time. If Syracuse doesn't get game day now, then when are they going to get game day? This is kind of the moment to give it to us. Come on. Come on, ESPN. Throw us a little bone here. I think we deserve it. What do you guys think? Leave a comment in the comment section below. Does Syracuse deserve to host College Game Day? Because I think they do. They're 8-3. They're playing Miami. They're 10-1. 2 elite quarterbacks. Massive stakes on the line. Miami must win this game. What more do I need to say? The stage is set, and I believe that Syracuse football deserves to host College Game Day. Period. End of story. Now, let's see if they get it. Let's hope. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. And for your second listen, check out the Locked On ACC podcast. Alex Dono and Kenton Gibbs, they keep it real. They bring you the truth about where your favorite ACC team stands within the conference. Find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. If you really liked it, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast. Folks, take care. And also, for one final time, Syracuse football deserves to host College Game Day next week against Miami. Come on, ESPN. Throw us a bone.